Hey guys, I'm Tom Radigan, and for today's video, we are talking about the legendary Fats Domino. When you think of rock and roll pioneers, you might think of Elvis Presley, Buddy Holly, Chuck Berry, Little Richard, Jerry Lee Lewis, Bill Haley, Bo Diddley, and of course, Fats Domino. Fats Domino probably had the best boogie-woogie style of piano in rock and roll. He is someone who has been considered the king of rock and roll from Elvis himself. As I have told many times on this channel, that when I was in 6th grade, I really discovered the birth of rock music, and it was a special time for me. I honestly felt I was living the music I was listening to. And of course, Fats music is something I gravitated towards. With songs like Ain't That a Shame, Blue Monday, I'm Walking, and Blueberry Hill. Blueberry Hill has been considered one of the best songs of the 1950s and has been covered numerous times over the years by Elvis, Elton John. Vladimir Putin even did a cover of it. Okay, moving on. As a singer as well, he has such character in his voice. He was a part of Imperial Records, and his well-known collaborator was musician, producer, band leader Dave Bartholomew. Fats Domino also influenced two artists that are like my favorite and later became known as great piano legends themselves, which is Sir Elton John and Billy Joel. This is what Elton John had to say about Fats Domino in a tribute to him of the day of his death. He was a giant in stature and a giant in music. When Billy Joel inducted Fats Domino in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, he wanted to thank him for proving to people that the piano is a rock and roll instrument. He most certainly did prove that the piano was a rock and roll instrument, and also the guy just brought so much joy into so many people's lives. I also need to address that the day of his death was the day my grandfather died, and it just made me realize I was able to live in a time where I had my Grandpa Joe as a role model, who was able to tell me stories of his early days, but also be in a world where I was listening to music from the 1950s, but to cherish the music, and Fats Domino was still alive at the time. So my tribute today for Fats Domino is making a playlist about my favorite Fats Domino songs that I think work best in his catalog. So now it's time for our Fats Domino playlist tribute to him, and I have narrowed it down to 14 songs that I really think are like his signature songs, and like the other playlists I have done on this channel, it's going to be like in chronological order, and just it's sort of like for me to show you guys how the music has evolved throughout time. For my tribute to him too, because like, you know, in my Buddy Holly video, I didn't have, any posters or records or anything, and unfortunately that's the case with Fats Domino, but I have this hat, and okay, so Fats Domino wore this hat a lot in, like, later in his life. A little story about this hat first. I actually bought this hat because I know this was like a John Lennon type hat, and I did not think I was going to do any, like, type of, wearing, like, because there was nothing I could do with Fats Domino, so I was like, it's like I'm at a loss, but okay, I'll just talk about him without any pictures or records behind me, fine. But then I saw this hat, and I was like, he wore this later in life, and I'm like, you know what? I've got my idea. So, you know what? In honor of Fats Domino, here, I am going to wear this hat for the video, and maybe I'll just take the glasses off too. So anyway, okay, this is an honoring the fat man himself, Fats Domino. All right, let's get on with this list. So we got, for number one for my playlist, Fats Domino, it's gonna start off with Fat Man. So the Fat Man actually came out in 1949. So let's talk about this. So when we talk about rock and roll, everybody sort of wonders, like, what was the first rock and roll song? What was the first rock and roller? Some people think, of course, Elvis, they'll say was the first superstar. Then some people will say Bill Haley was the first rock and roller. I gotta say, I think it's Fats Domino in some ways, because if you think about it, he had the song "The Fat Man," which was the first hit, and it wasn't like and it wasn't titled rock and roll at the time. Record companies didn't market it as rock and roll. They marketed it in 1950 and 51 as race music. White musicians doing like the same type of music that black musicians were doing, which was just R&B, really. This is more of like an R&B type style of music, so it wasn't really labeled rock and roll, but it's a great introduction to who Fats Domino is by embracing his heaviness with the Fat Man. And like, I love the line, like, they call me the Fat Man because I weigh 200 pounds, but all the girls love me because I know my way around, which there's definitely a dirty joke there, but it's such a great character, and it just shows you like who this guy is. And the boogie woogie piano style, I think, is also something that's really important with Fats Domino. Because when we talk about rock and rollers, and we talk about the rock and roll pioneers, and whenever we think of guitarists, we think of Chuck Berry, Buddy Holly, Elvis, Bill Haley. But when we think of people like for piano, we think of Little Richard, Jerry Lee Lewis, and of course Fats Domino. The one difference I find with Fats Domino than Little Richard and Jerry Lee Lewis, and you can totally tell it in this song and in other songs throughout this list, is that yes, Fats Domino is rock and roll, but Jerry Lee Lewis and Little Richard had more piano styles that were able to kind of enable the birth of rock and roll, with Jerry Lee Lewis's jumping type of piano style, Little Richard's like shrieking voice, their melodies and piano style kind of contributed more to just the whole rock and roll factor, where it's like when you think of their music, it's rock and roll. With Fats Domino's, it's rock and roll, but it's boogie woogie, in a lot of his piano style. It's a very type of, he's not like this fast-paced guy, he's not maybe jumping up on the piano like Jerry Lee Lewis, or shrieking his guts out like Little Richard or anything. I think, honestly, in my opinion, Fats Domino was somebody who's able to really capture the essence of not just rock and roll, but all the essences of what make rock and roll together. R&B, even jazz influence with his band. And also too, I gotta talk about the songwriting. This was written by him and his songwriting collaborator Dave Bartholomew, who they wrote so many great hits throughout the 50s and all that. But this is a great song to introduce who Fats Domino is, and it's a 1949 song too. And also an interesting fact is this song was recorded on December 10th, which is actually my birthday. So it was recorded 49 years before I was born, in 1949. Interesting coincidence, So I just find that really cool. And that's really what I gotta say to that. So even though this was 1949, it's still, it still holds up to today. I mean, it definitely sounds like an older record, but it's a cool, type of, intro to him. Very funny lyrics, and just, Fats Domino was a very, he had a lot of charisma, and you see that in his songs, and this is definitely an example of that. Okay, so coming at number 2 on my playlist, I would say Ain't That a Shame. Ain't That a Shame. So we're fast forwarding to 6 years later in 1955. So if you asked me in 1955 what I thought were the best songs and the songs that really defined what rock and roll was, I would say Ain't That a Shame is one of them. And yeah, it's got the boogie woogie style, it's got the chord progression, the 12-bar blues, which is famous for rock and roll. Anybody who wants to play rock and roll has got to know 12-bar blues. This song has that. It's got a great horn section, a saxophone solo. It's just even the opening lyrics with Fats going you may bump me, cry, bump when you said goodbye, and it's ain't that a shame, and the chorus is just so great, and the melody is so memorable. I mean, and like I said, the sax solo, the okay, I can get carried away with this, but I feel like it's just, also too, it definitely is a signature song when you think of rock tunes. I mean, if it's not, then why did John Lennon cover this song on his rock and roll album in 1975? Then tell me that. This is definitely when you think of Fats Domino, the few songs you think of, probably one of the songs that comes up. And then so coming at number 3, we got All By Myself. Now this song because I got into Fats Domino when I was really young, in middle school and all that. And I came across this song a little bit later, more my late teens and all that. It's not a song that I always will probably jam out to, but it's definitely a song that is a good I think this is what I think actually. I think it represents Fats Domino's character, his sense of humor, where it's I don't need nobody else to love you, I'm gonna love you all by myself, and I think those lyrics are very funny, and I think they're relatable to people, I think. And I think it's a great way to, like, isn't that just a funny thing? Like, if you were talking to a girl and you said stuff like that, it just, the whole thing about it is just very funny, and the whole approach to the song is what I love too. And another, song written by Domino and Bartholomew, like the third one on this list that's written to that team. The 50s, it was really, a songwriter was not considered the singer. It was the songwriter would write a song, and then there would be an arranger, a producer, and then they would have the person who would sing the song, who was right for the song. But Fats Domino was one of those songwriters as well, who was, a musician who made his own records and wrote his own songs. You got to give the man credit for that too. In 1956, we got I'm in Love Again. I remember hearing this song on, there was a TV station that had like 50s and 60s music, and this is the first time I heard the song, and I just thought it was a very, like, kind of uplifting, kind of fun, energetic song about being in love. And the melody is sort of simple, but Domino's vocal range in this is very interesting, how he just goes all over. If anybody's looking for like a good 1950 song, then I'm in Love Again is the choice, by far. So coming at number 5, we got My Blue Heaven. And what's so interesting about this song is this is an old 1920s song, and the thing about it that makes it so interesting to me is that the melody itself and the horns is just like in another planet, I feel like. And Fats Domino, I feel like, is able to take his vocals and really, like, uplift it and go on this type of journey with the melody. Like, it's got the 1920s style, but you can totally hear it in a 50s modern way, or like when it was modern at the time. So that's a thing that I really love about it. And it was another song that I found out on that station, the 50s, 60s. It was the golden oldies station. That's what it was, the golden oldies. Okay, no, I remember now. But oh yeah, no, definitely a song that has to make it on my playlist. And then coming at number 6, we got the Blueberry Hill, which is another older song that he didn't write, which was around in the 40s. Blueberry Hill is, like I said, Ain't That a Shame is another one on Fats Domino song. This is probably another signature Fats Domino song, and maybe one of the most signature songs of the 50s, and maybe in altogether, like, one known as, like, on the top 100 songs, this might be like in the top 20, maybe. And like I said, I'm not going to go too much into it, but there has been covers about it. It's been a song that Fats Domino really, like, was able to deliver to people. It was a real, like, trademark of him, I think, as well. Whenever I think of Blueberry Hill, the version that comes to mind, it's Fats Domino all the way. And definitely one of the best songs of 1956 by far. And okay, all right. And a little bit of that piano that I accidentally put in was from the song Blue Monday. Blue Monday is another, he's got a lot of blue in his songs. Oh my God, think about it. My Blue Heaven, Blueberry Hill, Blue Monday, all 3 in a row. I didn't even think of it that way. Oh my God, what a coincidence. Okay, that's cool. All right, so that song is another song that came out in 1956, and one of my other favorite Fats Domino songs. It's just talking about how much we hate Mondays, just or like Mondays are not fun, and gotta work, gotta sleep all day, want to sleep all day. Pretty much here comes Tuesday, and then just talking about Fridays when I get my pay, just the simple time of like people working, and I love like how he just like emphasized that like Saturday morning. Oh, Saturday morning. Yeah, definitely a classic. I like like the sax solo in it too. And then coming at number 8, we got I'm Walking. And this song, what's the thing that really made me really into this song, or like another thing that I really like about it is that I just found out actually was that Fats Domino got into a car accident one time, and people saw me, they're like, oh, he's walking, and then he thought that would be a good title to a song. And the fast, I've always loved this as a kid, like the fast pace of it, the I'm walking, yes indeed, and like how his voice is able to kind of catch up to the melody of like the pace of it, and like it's so funny too, just like how fast it goes, and the lyrics are funny as well. Like I said, this guy just had so much charisma, just a real character when you see him in interviews. And this song was covered by other artists, like Ricky Nelson was on the Imperial Records label, and that was one of the first songs he did, which was a cover of Domino. And then there's even a great duet actually in the 80s of Fats Domino and Ricky Nelson doing the song together. And what's so funny is because they both did that song that year. And of course it's a Fats Domino song, and when I look at Ricky Nelson's version, it's a cover, of course. But Fats Domino just does it so, like, I love like the fast lyrics with it, and I just love like the melody, like and you just really can bop your head, like you. And then also too, another great sax solo, just like also too, Fats Domino had that big band as well, which is great, and that's what it was when he would headline, because there was like they would do these big shows in 1957 and 58, and he was the headliner, and it would be Fats Domino and his orchestra. I mean, how could he not be the headliner of like those big shows? I feel like in our culture now, 50s musicians are kind of erased in some ways of like of their popularity to people. People still think of like people from the 60s, but I don't think people realize how popular Fats Domino was. Of course you had Elvis, who was the superstar, but Fats Domino, when you think of rock and roll, was one of the biggest rock and rollers at that time, along with Chuck Berry and Little Richard. And so that song came out in 57. We're gonna move now in the playlist to 1958 to A Whole Lot of Lovin'. And it's got another boogie woogie type of piano. And that year we had the year before we had another song, which was A Whole Lot of Shakin' by Jerry Lee Lewis, but this one is Whole Lot of Lovin' by Fats Domino. And it's not like I say, even though Fats Domino is a rock and roller, the difference with him, how he stands out differently than Little Richard and Jerry Lee Lewis, is he brings more kind of old boogie woogie and R&B styles to his music, and that's what really I think kind of makes his music very essential and like his own type of style. Another thing too I love with this, it's a great fast song. Just you can listen to it when you're feeling down or just whenever, just want to hear a good song, put on that. I remember hearing the song in the movie Diner. They used in a funny way there, and then also too, coming after that, we got I'm Ready. This was like an early 1959 record that came out, and I'm ready, I'm willing to rock and roll all night. And it's just like another one of his fast-paced songs, but with his rock and roll, it had the boogie woogie style, so it has like that formula that made Fats Domino's music work. He just had a specific sound that could work well, and that's why I think also too he and Dave Bartholomew as collaborators just were like great together throughout the 50s. Coming at number 11 now, we're getting into our last four songs, so we are still in 59, and it's I Want to Walk You Home. And you can tell that as we are evolving through the 50s, rock was changing into a little bit more softer ballads and all that, and that's kind of what this song is. It's a little bit more of a soft ballad. He still had a few hits around the time, and I Want to Walk You Home is definitely one of them. And another song that he has a lot of the same lyric in it, Walk You Home. He has I'm walking, I want to walk you home. And then we have another song that might have that title as well, but it's just a great melody, very like just like simple lyrics, just somebody who likes a girl, and it's just like, you look so good to me, ooh wee, like that's just like how sometimes people feel. And ooh wee might not be something you say in person, but it's sometimes a feeling. They're able to capture that type of inside feeling. You might think like, oh yeah, yeah, no, definitely one of my favorite Fats Domino songs, and has to be on this playlist in my opinion. So coming at number 12, we got I'm Gonna Be a Wheel Someday, and I gotta be honest, I didn't hear this song until later in life, but I love it. It's interesting because it came out after I Want to Walk You Home, and I think the thing that's cool about it is that like I said, I Want to Walk You Home had a different, like, kind of went in a different direction with rock music. It's going into like softer type of ballads, and this is more of like, in some ways, an uplifting rock song. Fats is here to stay, and rock and roll is here to stay. That's what the song really, I think, represents. Yeah, definitely a song you should listen to. And then coming at number 13, we're entering the 60s now, 1960, and we got Walking to New Orleans. And yeah, just like, another walking song. But the thing about Walking to New Orleans, like, I love the melody. It's so similar to I Want to Walk You Home, but like, I just love Domino's voice, and then how the orchestration is just accompanying him. And also too, an interesting thing is, even though he wrote this with Dave Bartholomew, it was also written by Bobby Charles, who was a young songwriter at the time, who wrote songs like "See You Later, Alligator." But another thing that's interesting about this song, with Walking to New Orleans, is New Orleans is, how he says, New Orleans is my home, and that was his home. And there's an interesting story, because, like I said, he died 5 years ago. In the 2000s, when there was the terrible Hurricane Katrina, in 2006, he did an interview with Brian Williams, because apparently when Hurricane Katrina was happening, people couldn't find Fats Domino and thought like he was missing, but he was well alive. And the interview with Brian Williams just proves it. And like I said, out of all the rock and rollers, he just seemed like the nicest guy. Listen, when it comes to celebrities, you don't know who they are, and they always say never meet your hero. So who knows? But he just had this quality about him that just made him seem like just such a charming guy who just, wanted to make people happy, and he did. He really did. And to end this on, we're going into 1961 now with "Let the Four Winds Blow." Let the Four Winds Blow. That's what it is. Like, you sometimes now don't hear the S on it, but "Let the Four Winds Blow." It's just a great song that just has that boogie woogie melody, but that real Fats Domino vocal style too. Like, I like the way you walk, I like the way you talk. You let me hold your hand, try to understand, stuff like that. And he's got the band in this and all that, and one of his really last big hits. He's one of those musicians that just played till he dropped. And and I think he's somebody who has been respected by Elton John and Billy Joel, and I guess Elton John and Billy Joel are two of my favorite musicians as well. And I love Fats as well, and I love all the 50s music, and I think it's cool when you see people like Elton John and Billy Joel who really were able to capture the essence of those artists. But when it comes to Fats, man, I just definitely like I said, he died the same day as my grandpa, but what was so interesting about hearing his music in the 1950s was, hearing his music of the, I wasn't in the 1950s. I wish, wouldn't have that been cool for me? I mean, I always felt like a 50s guy in middle school, and I think that's really what it was too. When I started listening to this music, I felt like I was a part of the time. It really was like, it caught me in, and it's hard to get that feeling back when you're a kid. You always want to capture it again. And I had a mic issue, but so you always want to capture it again. But the problem is that you can't always chase memories. Memories are going to be new and all that. But what you do have is nostalgia, and the nostalgia I have is, even though this can be considered nostalgia music, I have nostalgic memories listening to these songs for the first time, and I just want to thank Fats Domino for giving me those memories of really just loving this music. And I just gotta say, it was so cool at times when I listened to this music and realized this man was still alive. I didn't even know it at the time, because most of the rock and rollers that I was listening to were dead, So it was like, hey, he's still alive. That's cool. And, it's sad he's gone. It's really sad that a lot of 50s rock and rollers are gone, except Jerry Lee Lewis, thank God. Listen, rock and roll's going to live on with these guys. And, they made the classic songs that people love around the world, brought people together, black and white. It was just something that the world needed to hear. They were uplifting messages. They were songs that people could dance to. People could, be in love to, and really like, meet a girl and have a song that they can find like and compare their feelings to in that song, and Fats Domino is one of those people that was able to make that happen. And it really is. And I bring this quote from Carl Perkins, and I think I've said it before in other videos, is that Carl Perkins said one time that Chuck Berry told him, like, Carl, what we're doing is sort of like what our leaders are doing in Washington. And in some ways, they brought more, peace, I think, with people than politicians can, in a lifetime, and all that. I think really rock and roll was something that really does bring people together. And I know this might sound corny, but rock and roll is powerful, rock and the way there was, and I'm going to quote a kid that was interviewed by somebody in 1955. Rock and roll is cool, daddy, and you know it. And that's how we're going to end this video. Thank you guys so much. Hit that thumbs up and hit that like button and hit that subscribe button as well. Thank you guys, and see you guys in the next video, and bye.